real pleasure to be here with the students in the community at TEDxIIMRanchi. This is my first visit into Ranchi, and it couldn't have been at a better and a more challenging and stimulating platform. About 10 years ago, if somebody had asked me, what is social enterprise, or had suggested that I might actually attempt to start a company on the basis of innovation as a lever, I really wouldn't have imagined that that would have been possible. And the last 10 years, therefore, have been a tremendous learning journey for me in trying to understand what these two terms really are and find a way to connect them in a way that me and my team could play a sort of a multiplier role in this. What I'm going to talk to you about today, I mean, catalyzing change is a very large term. It encompasses a lot. I think I'm going to try and focus on a couple of catalysts to change that I have researched, I have understood a little bit, and I think I'm going to be spending many years exploring those. Catalysts for change. Now, clearly, no journey happens on its own. There has been a lot of reading and meeting a lot of very interesting people. But I want to bring out two very interesting experiences that actually brought a lot of this thinking together. They were not singular experiences, but a whole lot of conversations and talking. One was an opportunity to work with Mr. Shiv Kumar, the architect of ITC's eChaupal. And in 2007, 2008, I had an opportunity to work with him as a consultant in what he was designing as the third version, eChaupal version 3.0. For those of you who are not familiar, this is one of the world's largest connected networks of farmers. It was designed as a supply chain for ITC, but it had phenomenal inclusive impact. And in those months that I worked with that team, I think, and with Mr. Shiv Kumar, the ability to sort of share what the power of that vision was. How do you think scale when you think social enterprise? How do you think scale when you think inclusion? Those terms started to become very relevant for me. And the other, which was a very interesting set of insights, came from just understanding what Mr. Bill Drayton, the founder of Ashoka, Innovators for the Public, was actually talking about. And I've never met him, but I think his insight manifested for me more through the social entrepreneurs that I met. Every time I have met somebody who's committed, is championing a cause, has committed his or her life to it, I find that that insight, which Bill Drayton founded Ashoka on, manifests itself. The fact that those kind of people are fundamental innovators, are fundamentally unreasonable people, and therefore have the power to change. These two thoughts sort of came together. And therefore, what I'm going to try and do is actually talk today a little bit about social enterprise and innovation, and how the two are connecting. When you look at a lot of the people who are working in the space of social enterprise, at least for me, I found that they were doing brilliant work, but somehow the impact of their work was located where they were in a limited geography, sometimes in a limited catchment of people. But the problems in India are large. When you look at education, we have 138 million children who join school, and only 12 million youth actually reach college, which means you have about 120 million children and youth dropping out of education. However much education you put in place, if we can't solve that problem, we really can't solve. If we can't solve education, we can't solve health. If we can't solve health, we can't solve economy. It's a domino effect. Is it okay, therefore, to think in small numbers anymore? Or is it imperative for us to really start thinking large? How do we think large? Is that even possible? Is the infrastructure available? These are very large questions. And I think for me, when I started thinking about these and exploring these, I looked at a simple physics principle. I think we'll all be familiar with this. The principle of the lever. It's a mathematics principle, and when Archimedes talked about it, he said, if I could get a handle long enough, I could shift the world. I could lift a heavy weight. So essentially, a very large, heavy weight can be lifted if the right force is applied to the right length of the handle, which is placed on a fulcrum which has the ability to take the weight. Simple principle of the lever. What we are trying to do as a country today is really lift a very heavy weight. All our weights are heavy. Education is a heavy weight. Population is a weight. Yes, it's a dividend, but unless we get more children into school, more children through colleges, it is a weight. How are we going to shift that? How do social entrepreneurs look at shifting the weight? And what kind of a lever is possible, and what kind of fulcrums need to be used for that? And that's really where social enterprise and innovation sort of starts to come together. This is a visual of a school in North Bihar, Gopalganj district. Many of you in this area would know Chandrakant Singh. I was here in Bihar last year as a part of the Development Marketplace, the World Bank program. We were looking for social entrepreneurs who we could support, who wanted to scale. And I read about Mr. Chandrakant Singh in the newspaper. I called him. Surprisingly, he is sitting in Bangalore, while I'm sitting in Patna, trying to meet him. And he has designed this school. He works in Bangalore, but for his home state, in a place which has no electricity, which has no access to any kind of infrastructure. Children for miles don't have any good school to go to. And the primary schools are there, but really they are not being able to provide the support that is actually needed. He has gotten a whole group of farmers together, put the land together, created a school, currently powered by generators, wants to eventually power it with solar. How do you get teachers in? How do you solve that problem? So each of the classrooms is set up with LCD projectors. Skype connections come in through either a Wi-Fi or some kind of a internet facility. The teachers are sitting all over. Students are learning over Skype. You've suddenly taken the issue of teachers, space, electricity, combined it all together with a lot of commitment, and found a way to be able to really bring education in. 500 students today in the first batch are actually already studying. It's a very interesting model. Urja was started as an initial experiment with the British Petroleum, and today is run by an entrepreneurial team at First Energy. These are stoves that were designed and developed with the combination of a lot of social entrepreneurs and the IISc in Bangalore working together. They run on pellets. The pellets are made out of raw waste that comes out of the farm, which cannot be otherwise used, so it's very reusable in that sense. And today, these stoves are in about 450,000 households, sold by women who are powering a rural network of entrepreneurs who take these deeper into homes. This is a view of a slum in Delhi. Slums in any part of the world are areas where diseases are there as a result of sanitation, also as a result of the economic condition. So it's interesting that in India, almost 24% of people who get hospitalized go into poverty. They go below the poverty line simply because of the expense that it costs to actually be able to service poor health. This is a very interesting model that's been developed by Operation Asha, which works on tuberculosis. It's a very pertinent and difficult issue. The government has a great program to try and bring the medicines in, but how do you really get the medicines to the community? So Operation Asha has not only worked on the community model, it has also found ways to make sure that they are open very early and very late so that people can take them before and after. But they found that they were still not being able to make sure everybody who had tuberculosis was taking the medicines. They partnered with Microsoft to use biometric technology, and every patient today is tracked on that on a daily basis. If a patient doesn't come in, the consultant, the clinic counselor will get an SMS saying, so-and-so person has actually not come in yet, so you better go and meet that person. They have been able to bring down the rate of people not taking medicines dramatically. But it's phenomenal because this technology now allows them to be able to monitor and enable and engage with over 1 million people with TB on a daily basis on a dashboard. It's phenomenal what can be done. Finally, I don't know if many of you are familiar with this. This is a view of the kitchen of Akshay Patra. Akshay Patra started off as a small program to try and make sure children in schools were getting food. They realized that the volume of children who need food is so humongous that they cannot look at the problem as, let me give food to children anymore. How do I bring in operational scale into this exercise? They are able, today they feed about 1.3 million children. Their kitchens are fabulous areas of engineering. They have used gravity, they have used renewable resources, they have used renewable energy, they've used every kind of simple physics that is possible at a low cost to be able to make one of the most efficient systems possible. When we look at these models, what comes up very clearly is two elements that I want to highlight. One is the need for innovation. It's not possible to find these kind of solutions simply by saying that I want to build a large operation, because resources don't exist. Infrastructure doesn't exist. Talented people to be able to join social organizations to work, very difficult to find. So you've got to innovate at multiple levels. So these are organizations that are innovating fundamentally at multiple levels to get this going. So innovation becomes a very critical ingredient. The second ingredient here, you'll notice, is the essence of enterprise. The feeling that it's not just a small problem that I want to solve, but I want to solve, it's a very social orientation, but the mindset is that of an entrepreneurial enterprise development platform. We cannot afford to look at these problems small anymore. So it's social enterprise, very clearly, which essentially, for me, is about innovating at multiple levels, so that it is actually designed for scale. How do we do this? And like Bhavna was saying, yes, I think innovation is an art. There is a lot of serendipity about it, and it is necessary to keep that. But in our context, if we really want to catalyze change, I think some amount of science needs to come into that process. And in my mind, when we are looking at the science of this exercise, what we do at Innovation Alchemy is that we start to work with organizations who are looking to traverse this path, which is, I have an idea, I have demonstrated some impact, I've learned how to orchestrate that solution, but what I want to do is trigger large-scale adoption of any idea. How do I traverse that path? What do I do? I think the social entrepreneurs who are on this journey, first, of course, the mindset shift that there is a way that we can do it, a process and an approach that we can actually try. And then what do? We actually have, we sort of break it down into several different questions, and we use a very rapid prototyping method to work on the ground to start solving problems one by one. But at each point, make sure that we are looking at enterprise output as the sort of the nodal point. So prototyping to discover what ideas could work very, very rapidly. Prototyping to find out who could actually pay for them. Now, who pays for them is not necessarily always the customer. Many, many models evolve in the world today, from Google to Wikipedia. There are, online models, offline models, where payment structures have been experimented with. What can we learn from them? What can I put into my social organization, which naturally doesn't seem to be thinking about these kind of opportunities? So how do we find? Let's figure out those prototypes. We then start to look at prototypes, start identifying who can we collaborate with. No scale happens without collaboration. If I'm able to find a way that I can collaborate with the government in a particular state so that their problem gets solved and I'm able to take my prototype and innovation in, what conversation do I need to have? The conversation there is not about, let me take a government scheme. It's really an equal conversation about how can I collaborate? Are there corporate organizations that we can collaborate with? Are there other non-profits, social organizations, for-profits who are doing this? So collaboration becomes a very large frame, and we work very actively to prototype on that. Finally, of course, you've got to start prototyping and start finding the levers for adoption. Adoption is very critical, because this is not an innovative idea that we can take to the market, put on a shelf, and sell. So our paradigm is not selling. Our paradigm is really, how do you get more people to adopt? What levers will we need to use? Each of these questions, when opened out, allows us to put the challenge in front of us and the solutions we have at hand and start looking at new solutions that will get these answers. So a sort of a systematic approach. Of course, want to get deeper into it, but a little later. I want to quickly summarize by saying that innovation, therefore, is not something that we can look at as an ingredient that large corporate organizations use. Necessarily, it's an element that each one of us in our work needs to start being able to introduce. And that means insights at multiple levels. It's not just about an operation and trying to make it big. What insights do we have that will really solve the problem? Large operation, but cannot solve the problem. Let's not go there because we don't have the time. And we really are at a point where the problems are very large. The size of the issue is very, very large. We don't have enough time. I mean, health, education, employability, all of that is out there. I think we need an exit strategy out of these so that we can say in 10 years we will solve and we will move. And I think that's why we need to have catalysts that will allow us to be able to get there. That's what we do with my small team in Bangalore. Accelerate a lot of these processes. Thank you very much.